how big data can be used in tailoring media content. The first speaker is Joe Hibbs, and he's a senior vice president of television production. And then Joe has a very successful production business experience. And then most recently, one of the very famous one, House of Cards. And then this is going to be a very interesting and then innovative speech. Okay, and then definitely his talk will inspiring in the new way of using big data in media and entertainment. And please welcome Joe Hibbs.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to COCA for inviting me here. It's a real honor to participate in this conference. My name is Joe Hibbs. I'm the Senior Vice President of Television at MRC. We're an independent studio based in Los Angeles that works in both film and television. On the TV side, we're most known for producing the Netflix series House of Cards. I'm going to speak today about the process of how that show came together, how we developed it, and how that informs the way that we develop shows in a highly competitive marketplace. I've also been asked to speak about how big data played a part in the development of House of Cards. There seems to be a lot of interest in that subject matter. I don't work for Netflix, so I can't speak on Netflix's behalf, but if you provide me with enough hype, beer, and soju, I'll tell you anything you want after this. First, I'll give you a brief overview of our company. MRC is somewhat unorthodox in its approach to other studios, but understanding how our business is structured will be useful in discussing the genesis of House of Cards. Though we're small, MRC is a studio. We have almost every capability of the major studios: creative development team, physical production, finance and business, and legal affairs. However, we are first and foremost a filmmaker-focused studio. Our goal in film and television is to partner with extraordinary creative talent and help them create the movie or television series that they envision. Each film has a sort of custom-made form of distribution. We approach each project differently. But by giving our artists a tremendous amount of creative freedom, luckily we've been able to have some repeat business. Since MRC was founded in 2006, we've partnered and continue to work with filmmakers like Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, who we made the film Babel with and are now producing a television series. We've made 3 films, a television series and a digital series with Seth MacFarlane, 2 movies with Neil Blomkamp, and through our relationship with David Fincher on the film side, that led to producing the TV series House of Cards with him. So how do we put our approach into practice? In television and film, we develop all of our projects internally. So we put as much of the project together before there's ever a distributor or broadcaster on board. So that sometimes involves writing multiple scripts, series outline, budget, and casting. All of that's done before we ever know where the show or film will be distributed. We try to build an undeniable package so that we take this project out to the marketplace. We're not just looking for a development deal or a pilot. We're looking for a full series commitment. Hopefully the artists are able to keep their original creative vision intact, and it leads to fewer rounds of notes, fewer changes, and that's incredibly valuable to the artists that we work with. So I think what a lot of you want to know about, I can tell you the sort of genesis of House of Cards and how that came together. I've read some articles that big data was, informed of helped inform the development process, but really it started several years ago, almost 25 years ago, with a novel written by Lord Michael Dobbs. That led to a BBC miniseries in 1990 that was written by Andrew Davies, and almost 20 years later, an intern at MRC told us that was his father's favorite show, and it was something we looked into. So not really traditional big data in that way. We optioned that miniseries, and luckily we got it into the hands of David Fincher. Fincher, the thought of David Fincher sort of doing a political satire was very intriguing to us. So luckily he signed on board to executive produce. He brought in screenwriter Eric Roth and his producing partner Josh Donnan. For Fincher, it was very important to develop the show that he wanted to make. That meant not having notes from a broadcaster early on in the development stages. From there, we went out and we found him a writer, Bo Williman, who had written a political play called Farragut North, and we partnered Bo together with Fincher, Donnan, and Roth. The project was developed for almost a year and a half, again, before there was even a thought of Netflix or anybody else on board. When the script was ready, Fincher brought it to Kevin Spacey, who agreed with Fincher and signed on to play the lead role of Francis Underwood. From there, we budgeted the show, came up with a schedule, and our original intent was always we wanted to make an HBO quality show. HBO still is the benchmark, I think, for the best quality out there. Didn't mean we were only going to sell it to HBO, but that was the original intention. The idea of Netflix getting into original programming was something that we thought may be a possibility. Their subscriber base had reached a number that was starting to be on par with not only HBO but some of the other premium cable providers in the U.S. So we took the show out to HBO, AMC, Showtime, FX, several cable networks, and the idea of Netflix as maybe perhaps a second window was our original intention. Now Netflix looked at the project at that time and came to us and said they might actually want to be the first window, and they were looking to get into original content. That led to them making a 26-episode commitment of 2 seasons, which we would have never imagined at the time. Now the topic of this seminar is big data. I understand there have been articles written recently on ways in which the data analysis and collection played in part of House of Cards in the development of House of Cards. Our deal with Netflix was seen as a game changer to some, but the truth was it was just, I think, a great project that found a great home at the right time. Netflix had been a subscription-based streaming service without original content, so House of Cards was a huge risk for them. It was a huge risk for us to sell it to them. We didn't know if people would really watch original content on Netflix. We didn't know how viewers were to respond to the release of all 13 episodes at once. Did Netflix use big data collection capabilities in their decision to enter an original content market? Probably. Netflix is able to collect and analyze a tremendous amount of data on its subscribers' viewing habits. They know things like demographics, viewing habits, they know age, gender, they know what kinds of material are most likely to be consumed by each demographic subset. If you have a Netflix account, there's a good chance that they really know what you want to watch, even better than yourself. Netflix could see that their subscribers always watch new content and realized if they had an original show of certain caliber, it would likely resonate with their subscribers. So did Netflix use its data collection capabilities in their specific decision to buy House of Cards as their first original series over any other show? Probably not. Given that the role that big data plays in their operation, it may seem surprising. But in fact, Netflix's decision to buy House of Cards was more than anything a result of quality. When MRC set out to develop and sell House of Cards, like I said, our goal was to make an HBO quality show. We never develop a show with a particular network in mind. It's not that our goal was to sell only to HBO, it's just a way of saying that we set out to make the best show possible. By the time we brought that show to the marketplace, it had been carefully crafted by Fincher, Williman, Roth, and everybody else. Kevin Spacey's involvement made it even more attractive. We don't think about distribution first when we're developing shows. It's anytime we've woken up in the morning and decided that we were going to do something entrepreneurial or try to change the game, that's when we've failed. The content can't be the afterthought. It has to be front and center. If Netflix analyzed its data and decided what their subscribers wanted was a dark political thriller and then set out to find or commission one, chances are they would have ended up with a mediocre product. But given that they had been thinking about expanding into originals, when the opportunity presented itself, House of Cards made sense to them based on its quality and the package. Netflix decided to take a leap of faith because they believed in the material. When you have a credible show in front of you, no matter what percentage of your viewers are male, female, old, young, liberal, conservative, you succeed because you believe in the show and the show's potential. Netflix saw the opportunity to make their mark in originals with a flagship show, much like HBO did with The Sopranos, FX did with The Shield, and AMC did with Mad Men. They saw the quality and the promise of House of Cards, and they took the leap with us and the producers. Now, I don't mean to say that big data isn't important in the decision to make the show. Of course it is. There's people a lot smarter than me in this room that can tell you how much people analyze data when making decisions. You know, is the show commercially viable? Can you make it quality for the budget that you have? But in our experience, data analysis on the scale of what's being written about surrounding House of Cards wasn't what Netflix made its decision on. They made the decision on the quality of the show. Since then, since House of Cards, Netflix has had tremendous success breaking into original series with shows like Orange is the New Black, Hemlock Grove, and the upcoming Marco Polo. You've also seen other digital platforms expand into original content. Hulu, Amazon, and Yahoo have all jumped in as well. Since we've sold House of Cards, we've set up several other series in the last year. Each one of those series, again, we've set up 2 series this past year at Starz, but never was our intent to sell something to Starz. It was just to make a top quality show. And while big data will always play a part in the equation, we will continue to maintain our commitment to working with top filmmakers. If we sort of retain our commitment to quality, then I think the quality production will line up with the big data, and hopefully we'll find another opportunity like we did. Thank you, and if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you for sharing your experience in making a House of Cards, and then definitely these days, everybody's talking about House of Cards. So, well, if you have any questions, and then please.
예, 그러니까 결론은 빅데이터의 기반으로 해서 이 작품이 기획되고 만들어졌다는 게 아니라 MRC에서의 어떤 제작과 그 다음에 처음에 HBO를 겨냥을 했고 2번째 창구에서 우연히 서로가 맞아 들어간 것으로 느껴지거든요. 그렇다면 빅데이터를 기반으로 한 이 기획된 작품은 아닌 거 아닙니까? 한국에서는 그런 식으로 많이 이해를 하고 있거든요.
The question. Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I understand the question. I don't think you're wrong, but I think the show, I think the sort of misconception was that, you know, our show was developed initially outside of anything that had to do with Netflix. So I think where the big data comes in is with Netflix. So I'm sure Netflix took a look at what their subscribers are watching and the kinds of shows they watch, and shows that Kevin Spacey starred in, or I'm sorry, movies that Kevin Spacey starred in, movies David Fincher directed, and I think that all went into their decision to license House of Cards. But I think the misconception may be that the data came first, and from the data that the story came out of that. That's not true. That's not necessarily true. Does that make sense?
It sounds like you created the content first, and then Netflix they used big data analysis technologies, and then they used it for some kind of decision making in making some contract with you.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So any other questions? Okay.
Talk about obviously when you deal with a network have notes. So is it true that Netflix were actually much more hands-off in terms of the creative process?
Yes, they were. First of all, they've been tremendous partners, and I think they marketed the show like we couldn't have imagined when we made this deal with them 3 years ago. But MRC, we're known also to be hands-off, and I think that was a big reason somebody like David Fincher decides to get into television, because he wants that creative freedom. So they have executives, they have a great team there in their originals department, but I think it's never, you never have to jump through hoops. They're there for the table reads, they visit the set, but it's very much about, sort of supporting the artist's vision. So, yeah, and I think that's a reason, honestly, that the show was successful, because it wasn't sort of put through a filter of rounds and rounds of notes from, studio and network.
So one more question, if I can. Obviously, a TV series is always evolving in terms of Bo has notes, David has notes, Kevin has notes. When were those scripts locked early on because you had that luxury, or was there still lots of writing going on even in the same way, except you didn't have the network driving those changes?
Yeah, we had a great long writing period before we went into it. So I think we did 13 episodes of the first season. We probably had 12 scripts written, but the truth is, and this goes for any show, you're constantly rewriting. Same with film. I think especially once you cast the rest of the roles, and you get somebody like Robin Wright who comes in and plays Claire Underwood, you start writing to the actors, and then storylines that don't work. The first season, the Peter Russo character, he was always in there, but it was a much smaller role. But the actor, Corey Stoll, was great. So Bo started writing and giving more plot lines to him. So, but the cool thing was it was always based out of what Bo and Fincher and all those guys wanted. It wasn't sort of dictated. We also made the show in a vacuum, so there was no audience or no audience feedback, which can be scary, but it's also refreshing.
Okay, who there? So.
I watched the part of the House of Cards, not all, but I think it is dominated by some story, like other show, like other drama. Then I would like to know how your analysis of the data influenced the story. It might modify the story somewhat. And another question is about the economics. How do you think the application of the data analytics to the House of Cards changed, altered the profitability or revenue of the show?
So the first question was, how does the data influence the story?
How does it influence the modification of the story? Story must be given at the beginning, and maybe the analytics of the data would have changed its plot of the story or contents of the stories a little bit.
Yeah, I think the storyline, it was based on a BBC series. So I think when Netflix bought the show, they had the luxury of seeing the original series, so you sort of knew where it was going. So maybe in their decision to license the show, it played into that. And everybody does their own form of sort of analyzing the audience in between seasons. But the truth is, you really get it. More so than from the big data, you get it from audience feedback and reaction. So when you're going into season 2, you get a sense of what's working and what's not working based off, it's as simple as reading like blogs and people tweeting about the show and people speaking directly with the creator on Twitter. So it doesn't influence the story a lot. We really do, at the end of the day, which I was trying to say is we do set up the sort of the writers to really write the show they want to write. As far as profitability and the economics, you say, I can't speak for Netflix, but hopefully, we're just wrapping up a season 3. We're hopefully going to do a season 4. I wish I knew how many people watch the show, but I don't know that. I'm actually excited that I don't know that, because then we don't have to wake up and look at ratings in the morning. So all I can say is that we're still making the show, so, you know, and the show's been well received around the world, which was surprising to us because it's a show about U.S. politics. But so I don't know if that answers your question specifically, but
Was the original writer of the story. Yeah, I don't know, it's a single person or like a couple of people, but were they happy with the modification of story from the big data analytics?
yeah, well, he wrote, Bo Williman, who's the head writer, and he's a staff of writers. He's continued to write the show that he wants to write. So nobody's necessarily influenced him and told him he should do this or that. You know, he had a pretty clear idea of what he wanted to do. So I think he's happy. He's still doing it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question. All right.
네, 빅데이터 분석에서 나온 자료와 그리고 또 감독이 또 추구하고자 하는 방향이 좀 다를 때가 있을 것 같은데요. 그때는 그 어떤 해결책을 좀 사용을 했는지요?
Sorry, can you repeat the beginning of the question?
그리고 약간 추가를 좀 해보면 그 제작자, 그 감독의 어떤 영감이라든지 그 느낌에서 나오는 어떤 그 추구하는 방향과 그 빅데이터에서 나온 그 분석 결과가 충돌을 일으킬 때가 있는데 그럴 때는 좀 어떤 부분에 보다 좀 중요도를 두고 의사결정을 했는지요?
Well, fortunately, we haven't had that problem so far. I assume if we do, it does get to that point, people will just stop watching the show. But there hasn't been that. I mean, again, I think analysis and research comes in, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the writers and the directors make the show that they want to make. And I think, you know, I think as much as audiences can tell you they want something, they really don't know what they want until it's put in front of them. So there's never been a sort of audience and creator, you know, butting heads at all. Really, we continue, or I'm sorry, the writers continue to tell the story that they want to make. You know, and sometimes, you know, like I said, the research and the analysis is there for them if they want it, but it's not there for them to, you know, change storylines based on that.
Yeah, but in the future, maybe more and more people are using big data analysis, and they want to reflect the result from big data analysis in even making the films and dramas. And there can be some potential, you know, conflict between maybe director and then some result from big data analysis. How do you envision, you know, that kind of conflict can be resolved?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it, and I can't speak specifically to this because we're a film company, but I don't work on the film side. Mm-hmm. You see that a lot in marketing, or sorry, testing, when you test a film for an audience, and a lot of the times the director has a certain vision that he wants, and then the audience fills out, you know, scorecards and tells them that, you know, we hate the ending of your movie, the movie that you made, that you love. So I think really what we do is you know, I think smart directors sort of take that, you know, if you know, 40% of their audience is telling them they don't like the end of something, then, you know, I think if they're smart, they're going to go back and sort of analyze that and figure out what it is exactly they don't like. Mm-hmm. And again, it doesn't mean they have to necessarily, the audience shouldn't tell them how it should end, but maybe that'll sort of give them another idea or another way to approach it. So television's a little bit different, I think, in between seasons. I think you're usually just making it and getting it up on the air as fast as you can. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a lot of time to necessarily react mm-hmm. to that. But, you know, audience feedback always plays a part. But I think big data analysis up front, I think for specific broadcasters, it can tell them the kinds of shows that their audiences want. Mm-hmm. But I'm on the other side as a studio and a content provider and producer. So for us, what I was saying earlier was, for us, it's always about the quality of the show first. We'll find the right home and hopefully that home that we find has done all of their analysis and it matches up with the project we have, but we can't from the beginning start to, develop projects with, big data in mind, because, if we tried to do that, or we could do that on a computer, then I wouldn't have a job. I'm just kidding.
Okay. So, any other questions? Wow. So, lady on the side.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. And as we all know, House of Cards was really the beginning point of all these digital video platform companies starting to produce their original contents. And we see this trend becoming more and more important. And just coming from the media industry, I would like to ask you, do you think that the platform companies can ever become real native original content creators with the help of big data?
I'm sorry, are you saying will Netflix and Amazon?
Or Netflix or Hulu or companies, platform-oriented companies, they're more and more interested in developing their own contents, and they've been doing that with the production companies like yours. But in going forward with the help of big data and the rising importance of big data, would that ever be possible? That all these digital platform companies becoming content creators?
Yeah, well, I think in some ways they already are. Yes, some of them, license or, co-produce shows with companies like the one I work for, but I think a lot of them have already established themselves. I'm sure some of them will do it on their own without other production companies. It's the same thing you saw with a lot of broadcasters or premium cable channels, HBO, who produce shows, who produces their own shows, but they also license too. So I don't think it'll ever go one direction. I think again, I go back to if a show's good enough or it's quality enough, then people will change their distribution models based around the quality of a show. If you start with the distribution model and then try to find content and back your way into it, I think that's where you kind of, tend to step in it a little bit. So. But yeah, I think they already are original content providers, and I think, I said, again, HBO is, an amazing place, but I think now when I talk to creators and writers and directors, it's always Netflix, probably because they think I work there, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then due to the time limitation, and then, Joe, thank you for sharing your experience and your insight. And please give him a big hand.